Alex Medina. For those of you who don't know, he's a defense attorney for businesses. He owns 3 businesses himself, one of which is a law firm. And this 40-minute episode dives into everything from the foundation of a business to being able to use AI as a tool in any career path to his faith and his work-life balance. This is an episode you don't want to miss. Enjoy it. Welcome back to the Sikhana podcast. I'm Akam. I'm here with Alex Medina. Alex, you own your own law firm.
I do.
Alex, quick background on you. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Well, quick is relative for a lawyer because we have way too many words and we always think we're smarter than everybody. But so I'm 47 years old. I have 4 boys, 17, 15, 13, and 10.
Wow.
And I've been practicing law for 23 years. And
amazing.
I can say this for only a few more years, but I'm not as young as I look.
Yeah. Did you grow up here?
No, so I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area,
Okay.
a town called Livermore.
Okay.
And then went to Berkeley for undergrad, and then went to Loyola Marymount for law school.
Wow.
Stayed down there for, way too long, because if you've ever lived in LA, any minute's too long. Sorry if you're from LA, big Giants fan. And then moved up here, worked in a bunch of law firms down there, and then moved up here in 2006.
How'd you get into law? I mean, what prompted you?
I was not, well, so I'm half Filipino. So when you're Filipino, there's only a few, if you're Asian, there's only a few careers. So you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer,
engineer.
You can be a nurse, engineer, accountant, or you can work at the post office, or you can be a TSA agent. And I was not smart enough to be a doctor. So I took AP physics. This is all a true story. So I took AP physics in high school. I thought I was going to be a doctor. And it was like my first non-A pretty much in my life.
Damn.
And so I was like, oh, shoot, what I got to do? So I took civics my senior year in high school, like totally love it. Like fell in love with the Constitution, all that kind of stuff. And then you're way too young to know this movie. But I saw a movie called A Few Good Men.
No idea.
Right?
Yep,
It's crazy.
no
Right. But it's Tom Cruise is in it and a guy named Jack Nicholson, and he's a Navy lawyer.
Okay.
And I was like, I want to do that.
Wow.
Yeah. So kind of fell in love with the law back then. So that was my senior year in high school. I said,
Okay.
I'm not smart enough to be a doctor. I should go be a lawyer.
So are you a defense attorney?
Defense attorney, but I can talk about that if you want.
No,
it's kind of boring.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I represent businesses and business owners.
Okay.
I happen to own 3 or 4 businesses, so my passion is to support businesses and business owners.
What have you learned through the tedious process of becoming a lawyer? I mean, it's long, a lot of education. Any lessons that you've learned through that?
Yeah, I would say it is so much harder to build something and to grow and sustain something than it is to tear it down. And so primarily as a defense attorney, my entire career, and as somebody who's started and grown, 3 businesses, I defend what other people have built.
Yeah.
Like I protect people's dreams. And if there's people out here, if you are a plaintiff's lawyer or you work for somebody, I'm sorry, but you're kind of usually somebody who's like attacking.
Yeah.
I represent business owners. My dad immigrated here from the Philippines. He was a small business owner. I'm a small business owner. It takes so much guts and courage and faith and prayer and all that kind of stuff to put yourself out there and employ other people. That's my heart and passion.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really cool and gratifying to help protect, that small business. And that's really what I've learned. It's like, we think of businesses right? Like we're here in Loomis. I don't know what your reach is on this podcast, but we're in a small town called Loomis. Loomis is built on small businesses. Small businesses are run by people. Yeah. People and families. Somebody had a dream. And somebody had the guts to go out there and make that dream into reality.
Yeah. So you said you currently own 3 businesses?
Yes.
What are those?
So I own Medina McKelvey, which is an employment law firm. So we represent employers all up and down the state of California. Okay. I got to just say, I think we're probably the best employment firm in California. Okay. And then I own a separate training company. So that training company helps businesses from getting sued. So we help prevent the types of lawsuits that we do. And then I'm part owner in a mediation company. So one of my life missions is to be a peacemaker. So if you have a business that's been sued, what we do is we come in and then we help resolve the lawsuit. Okay. So we're not the defendant, we're not the plaintiff, we're actually the mediators. We help negotiate the settlement. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so your history was you became an attorney.
Right.
Where did that shift come where you started your own firm, and what prompted that shift of kind of going from working for someone to becoming the boss?
Right. I never, ever, ever thought I was going to be an owner, ever. Okay. I was always the guy that I thought I would work for somebody else and just support somebody else and become. So the whole thing, if you know anything about the law, you watch TV, you watch movies, like you put in your time, you make partner, you know, kind of do that kind of stuff. And that's what I was doing. I actually had made partner at a law firm. And then I was working actually for the biggest law firm in the world, was working in downtown Sacramento, and it was kind of going on my way. But what happened to me was I was working too much and I never saw my family. Okay. So at the time I had 2 kids, we had a 3rd kid, and I was leaving before the sun came up and I was coming home after the sun went down. I literally barely saw my kids. And so if you're working in a really big law firm, you have to make a trade-off. I mean, seriously, there's so many hours that you have to work. You cannot be, I don't care what anybody tells you, you can't be a great husband and dad and be a great lawyer. You have to choose. And I had been making the wrong choice. So I had made a decision really to spend less time working. I was a really good lawyer. People told me I was a great lawyer. I'm not, trying to brag or whatever. But I had decided to work less. And so this was, 13 or 14 years ago. It was like 2 or 3 days before Christmas. The partner that I was working for called me up and he said, "Hey, Alex, I got some bad news for you. We're taking you off the equity partner track and we're cutting your pay like $10,000 or $15,000 a year. Damn. And we're putting you on probation because you're not billing enough hours. Even though you're killing it, even though your clients love you, even though you have the top evaluations, you have to bill more." Yeah. I'm just like, I'm already billing too much. I already have this commute. I already, don't see my family enough. What else can I do? So for me, it was like, and I think he expected me to say, okay, I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to bill more. I'm going to be a good soldier or whatever, like everybody else does, because you're already working for the biggest law firm in the world. And it's like an opportunity just to be there. And so at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like that kid who's always done well. And so it was really terrifying for me. Okay. But for me and for my wife, we were just like, okay, this is an opportunity. Everything, that's another lesson I would tell you is everything that bad happens in life, there's always a lesson to be learned. Like never let adversity go to waste. Okay. Like silver lining type of. Right? Yeah, there's always something to be learned from that. Yeah. So I'm a spiritual guy, I'm a faith-based guy, I'm a Christian, I'll just say it. So we had to pray through that. We had to figure out like, what's the opportunity here? And it came to me as like, oh my gosh, like, why don't I just start my own firm? And that's nothing I ever thought I would do. I didn't think I had an entrepreneurial bone in my body. Wow. I had never brought in a client, like ever. I'd never had any sales background, no business background, other than watching what my dad had done. And all I had done was support other lawyers. I thought my gifts were writing briefs, arguing in court, because you have to do that, right? Yeah. As a lawyer, you have to do all that kind of stuff. But I seriously thought I was just like the dude who wrote briefs and made other people look good. So I was like, are you serious? Like total like leap of faith type of thing. But I did it because I put my family first. That's the number one thing is I put my family first, started my own firm, and haven't really looked back since. Wow. You talked about entrepreneurial bone in your body. You thought you didn't have any. Specifically, I know there's a difference, and people don't understand. There's a difference between, understanding your field inside and out and being good at that and actually owning a business, even if it does pertain to that field. I mean, specifically for you, did you notice any differences when you started to own your own firm, specifically on the business aspect of it? Was there any differences in that? Oh my gosh, it's so different. Yeah. So in the field of law, they don't teach you business at all. Yeah. Like it's just not at all. They teach you how to practice law. They teach you how to write. They teach you how to read. They teach you how to critically think, but they do not teach you how to own a business. And in fact, most lawyers are terrible business people. Yeah. I mean, they're just awful at it. But what's funny is what I would tell, people who are thinking about going into business or whatever career path, I would say like the number one thing I would tell people is really get to know yourself. Like know your personality, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and know the types of things that energize you and deplete you. Because if I had done that sooner, I probably would have started my own firm a lot sooner. Because the parts of me that make me a really good business owner, and by the way, I do probably 80 to 90% of the business development for our firm. So I bring in probably, 70 to 80% of the new cases. Yeah. I love it. And it turns out I'm really good at it. And I didn't know that I was good at it. And if I hadn't left, that's most of what I do is I go and I meet clients and I take care of the clients. I'm kind of like the relationship manager. I'm usually on Zoom or in meetings like 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day. Wow. I left a firm, never had brought in a client, And just as an example, in the last 3 weeks, I probably brought on like 10 new huge cases.
Wow.
And and I'm a natural at it. I'm not trying to sound like whatever.
No, yeah, it makes sense.
But it's just what God made me good at. And I didn't know that. But if I had really done self-reflection, what people would tell me that knew me like outside of the law, right? So when I was practicing law for, 14, 15 years before I started my own firm, if you saw me at work, I was like, kept my head down, wrote a bunch of briefs. Honestly, it was probably pretty boring because I was like so afraid to make a mistake. I was a completely different person. But outside, people knew me as like super talkative, super passionate about everything. And I just thought that was just me outside of work, right?
Yeah.
And work Alex was just like, do whatever.
The briefs, yeah.
But then once I had my own firm, I had to do that kind of stuff or I wouldn't make any money. I couldn't support my family. And so I was able to then have the courage and the freedom to be myself.
Yeah.
And so honestly, like I'm here at a podcast, I didn't know what to wear. You'll hardly ever see me wearing this stuff, dude. I'm usually wearing a hoodie and Air Jordans or whatever. And one of the things that I love about owning my own business is I can be myself.
Yeah.
And that's what helps me relate to clients.
Yeah.
And so what I would tell folks who want to get into business is be you and don't apologize for it and lean into that. And there's all different sorts of leaders.
Specifically, so you found the way you lead through just your normal personality?
Yeah.
So you've always been a social guy, or?
I've always been a social guy, but I didn't know it. And then once it started working and clients really appreciated my authenticity and being very direct. So I'm working with business owners. And I think one of the things they appreciate is I'll just tell them, hey, that's not right. Don't do that. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. You're going to lose. I'll help you win. And that's just kind of how I am in other parts of my life. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, this works. That's how I'm gonna lead. And certain parts of my personality or leadership style that aren't great, I have people that will help come alongside me and do that. So building a team is really, really important.
So specifically, when owning a business, were there a few skills that you would give that would, I guess, be like necessary that you would need to have to own and operate a successful business?
Yeah, 100%. What I would say is you've got to have a team.
Okay.
And I'll go back to knowing yourself. And there's a lot of tools for that out there. I won't pretend to know like all of them, but there's, all these different personality profiles that are really, really good.
Yeah.
I would encourage folks to figure those out. People talk about the Enneagram. We're really big at my firm on something called the DISC.
Okay.
But the more that you know about yourself, then you'll know who to surround yourself with.
Makes sense.
I'll just give you an example. Most of the time, it's really helpful to know the things that really energize you. Like types of things where you'll do something, and you'll know this in your own life. 2, 3, 4 hours will go by, and you won't even realize it because you're just in the zone.
Yeah.
You'll forget to eat. You'll forget to go to the bathroom. You're just like, what the heck? And there's other things that you'll do that even though you might even be good at it, you like dread it. It'll be like 15 minutes, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. For me, it's like most of the details. Like some things I have to do because I think we have almost 50 employees now. Sometimes I have to look at spreadsheets for like our profit and loss statements and stuff. Like honestly, it's like 15 to 30 minutes, but I would rather go to the dentist and get like 5 fillings than look at a spreadsheet. Yeah. I can do it, but it drains me. I feel like it's been 10 hours when it's 15 minutes. But if I have to pitch like a new case and I'm talking to a business owner and helping him get out of trouble, I'll talk for 90 minutes straight. And I'm just like, I feel like I just like climbed a mountain. You know what I mean? Like I'm just so in the zone.
Yeah. Okay.
And so if, for everybody to know what that is for them, what's that thing that gets them pumped up and what's the things that deplete them, build a team because you got to know what you need for a business. Every business needs like accounting, finance, business development, HR, the actual thing that you do, figure out what those pillars are and then bring in people who have the skill and the gift where all they want to do is that one thing, right? Like if we didn't have somebody who geeked out on spreadsheets, like we'd fall apart. Yeah. I have a guy, he just wants to look at spreadsheets all day, right?
Makes sense.
But he would never get on the phone and try to bring in a client. He'd fall apart.
Yeah. Okay, so besides doing personality tests, how else would you look to find that team?
We go culture first.
Okay.
And so, law firms get a really bad reputation. Law firms, lawyers and politicians, like nobody looks forward to meeting with their lawyer, right? Yeah. We get a really bad rap. And so we have tried to build a culture at our firm where we really want it to be like a forever job.
Okay.
I mean, we have worked really hard at that. So our law firm has been named one of the best places to work, three years in a row.
Wow.
And people have said it's like a refuge working there. So we start culture first. Mm-hmm. And so we look for people who want something different. And so what we do is we basically say, we put whatever your value system is, whether it's faith or no faith or whatever, everybody has some type of worldview.
Yeah.
So your values first, your family second, and work comes third. And when we go out and we hire, even from our job posting to the way that we interview, we want to know what makes people tick and what's important to them. And oftentimes what we'll do is we'll bring people in, if they're not a lawyer or a paralegal, because if we need a lawyer or a paralegal, they have a very specific skill set, like you have to have a degree, right? But most of the time we'll hire for culture first, and we ask a lot of really important questions about their skill set, what they love, what they hate, what they're good at, what they're not good at. Do they resonate with our culture, which is to serve businesses, serve business owners, and do they have the work ethic, that kind of thing? Mm-hmm. And then we watch them. Usually we'll give them a really crappy job, honestly, usually for the first 6 months, and we see how they handle that and see what skills they have, and then we'll move them into different departments.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So being in law in general, the industry is so competitive. Besides, culture is actually a really big thing.
Yeah.
Differentiating yourself from other competitors, are there other things that you do besides culture to differentiate yourself?
We do a lot of market research.
Okay.
We try to be like the anti-law firm. And so most of our lawyers have come from the big law firms. Uh-huh. And so what we did was we sat down when we started our firm, and we still do this. We'll say, what worked in the big law firms? It's called big law. That's like the term of art.
Yeah.
If it worked, we use it. If it didn't work, we'll throw it out the window. Mm-hmm. Anything from dress code to the bill of hours requirements to the way that we charge our clients. One of the things we'll do, for instance, is people always complain about their bills. We just tell our clients, if you don't like our bill, we'll just write it off. Because we'd rather you would feel that you got value than we nickel and dime you for something.
Makes sense. And
so we really try to look at trends in the industry, and we think about it from the perspective of the client. So this is really good for business. I'll give you this one. I'm probably stealing it from somebody. You can look it up on ChatGPT, which we use a lot, by the way. We call it the 3 Ps. And so it's people, process, and product. And studies have shown that if you take care of the people, including internally or externally, if you just really, really care about the people, and if you have a really, really good process, whether it's a service that you deliver or whether it is a product that you sell, oftentimes the end result, the product, doesn't even matter as much. So I'll give you an example. We are so good at taking care of our clients. We get back to them immediately. I'm so good at getting back to people like so fast or whatever. We care about them. They feel heard. They feel valued. They feel, like, it's weird. You'll have people say, I never felt like loved by my lawyers. It's the weirdest thing. So the people part is taken care of.
Okay.
And then our process is so efficient. Everybody knows how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost, what's the range that their case is going to settle for. Like, they really just feel like dialed in. Mm-hmm. So many people, they'll hire a lawyer and they'll feel like, and take it out of law. Like, if you're gonna buy a house, we were talking beforehand about construction.
Yeah. And
you want to hire a contractor, and I want you to build me a house. How long is it gonna take? I don't know. How much is it gonna cost? I don't know. When's it gonna be done? I have no idea. Right? We take all the mystery out of that. And so if you take care of the people and you give them a predictable, stress-free process, honestly, like the product, meaning the end result, they don't care as much. Meaning we'll get them a good settlement or something like that, but we hit all 3. Makes sense. So we just get repeat business, and then they'll go tell everybody else about that. So
you talked about AI. We're going to come back to that, but you just mentioned that people keep coming back. Mm-hmm. In terms of marketing and specifically your network and other, how do you bring clients in using your network? How do you use your network?
Yeah. So we call it a people first approach.
Okay.
That's just, we really want to figure out, particularly since we serve business owners, we need to understand what their business is. Uh-huh. It's not just a one size fits all. So if they're in the manufacturing industry, I need to learn what their business is just as much as they are. I need to learn the industry, and we're really, really good at that.
Okay.
And we got to figure out like what is upsetting them, what makes them tick. And it's really about connecting with them on a human level. And so all of our people are trained in emotional intelligence. This is really, really big today. And I think that a lot of lawyers are really bad at this. They think that their cases are about the law and the facts, and it's not. It's about the people. And if you connect with the people, then they're going to feel valued and they're going to put their trust in you. Because when somebody gets sued, apart from like a health diagnosis or something else like that, it's probably their worst day of their lives. Somebody's trying to take money from them and they feel like it never should have happened. So we want to be able to tap into that. And what's the fear they're feeling? Every single person, the one common thing that everybody has, like if you really think about this, whatever race, nationality, language, where you grew up, whatever, there's one common thing that every human being has, and it's fear.
Yeah.
Right? And so we tap into that, and I really try to figure out, like when I'm trying to bring in a new client, like what's the one thing that this business owner is afraid of? And we're really good at that. So we really train our people in kind of emotional intelligence. And sometimes it's like a lack of certainty, right? And I can figure that out like pretty early on.
Okay.
Like, okay, this guy he doesn't know how long this is going to take. He doesn't know how much it's going to cost. Is he going to lose his business? If somebody has a lack of certainty, I need to be the guy who I can give you certainty. If he's really feeling like he's got like, this feels really unfair, right? I need to be the guy that's like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to get you justice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does.
Yeah,
how do you become emotionally available in that being able to just like notice that?
There's training. And so we do a lot in the area of neuroscience. And so I don't know if you want to go down this route or not, but there's like a part of the brain, it's called the amygdala. And it's like the lizard part of the brain, they call it. It's fight or flight.
Yep.
And so when somebody is threatened, there's 3 reactions. It's fight, flight, or freeze. And you're physically incapable of having rational thought when that happens. And there's ways to kind of counteract that. And so we train all of our people to recognize the triggers.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So with owning your own company and obviously not working with someone else, what added stress does that bring? What specific things are you thinking about on a daily basis that are, I guess, added?
I think about the fact that as we've grown and we've doubled in size for the last 2, maybe 3 years, we've had just rapid growth. I think about the responsibility of being responsible for other people's livelihoods.
Okay.
And that is a crazy responsibility.
Yeah.
And I don't take it lightly, because I'm providing for my family and I've got people who have kids and they're putting their kids through school. And then now we've got like 401k plan. And it's crazy to really think about that. If we don't do well, other people's lives are impacted.
Yeah.
And that is something that I don't think about it as stress anymore, because I think that we have been very good stewards. And so we've done a really good job of diversifying what we do, so that if there's a recession, I actually think that we would do well.
Okay. Why is that? That's because
we're in California. Yeah. So unless California changes its politics, it's most likely always going to be anti-business and pro-employee. And so when the economy is bad, employees are going to feel the need to sue to get money. We represent businesses, right? And if the economy is good, businesses are going to have money and they're going to be more willing to fight if they get sued, because they're going to be flush with cash.
Okay.
Right? And we do every type of employment law.
Yeah.
So we are very well diversified.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to come back to AI. We have 2 more topics. AI is one of them.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What are your thoughts on it? You touched on it.
Okay, so I use AI all the time. But you got to be really careful with it. It even says on ChatGPT, it can be wrong. Like I'll even use it for math sometimes, and the math is wrong.
Yeah.
You got to be super duper careful with it. It doesn't replace human thought. It's called artificial intelligence for a reason. There was actually a lawyer who lost his bar license because he had it write a brief for him, and it made up cases that didn't even exist.
Wow.
So what I would say, it's a tool. It's a starting point. And where it makes me nervous is, and I've seen this because I've been practicing for over 2 decades, and I have noticed that the quality of lawyers coming out of law school has declined precipitously, because what takes a good lawyer is hard work and time. You have to retrain your brain. And if you're familiar with a guy named Malcolm Gladwell at all, or the principle of 10,000 hours, okay, there's this principle that you cannot master something until you've done it for 10,000 hours.
Okay, I'm familiar with that.
That's basically 5 hours of billing 2,000 hours a year. You can't short circuit it. There's no AI way to become a lawyer. There's
sense.
no like, and this generation, and sorry I'm lumping you into this, but you've had the internet at your fingertips from the time you were a kid.
Yep.
And we've never had that in the history of the world. Every other generation in the history of the world, we know how they turn out. Like, it's kind of a joke. Like, we know how the Iron Age turned out. We know how the Bronze Age turned out. We know how the Renaissance generation turned out. We know how the baby boomers turn out. We don't know how your generation's going to turn out.
Yeah.
We don't have research on how TikTok and Instagram and Snap, we don't know how you're going to turn out. We have no research. But what I am seeing in my limited field is the lawyers that are coming out are lacking the critical thinking skills. And so the ChatGPT piece, it's not quite there. And so I would caution people using that as a shortcut. That's the negative. Here's the positive. It's really, really helped us on the emotional intelligence side. Let me give you an example. So with our clients, one of the things that helps us do really well is, like I told you, we connect emotionally with them and they really feel heard and stuff like that. I've got a certain personality style. I know what it is because I spend a lot of time on it. And we have business coaches. We do all this stuff on emotional intelligence. So I'm pretty good at knowing what personality type my clients are and knowing what their emotional triggers are. So I have to deliver some really bad news to them, or if the chemistry is not quite right with them, I will use AI. I don't put in their information because it goes public, right? They'll take your information, so we anonymize it. But I'll write up what I want to write to a client, and I'll say, here's the email. But my client is, and I'll use the DISC profile, a DI, and their number one trigger is autonomy. Help me rewrite this email so they feel valued, respected, and heard. And ChatGPT will rewrite my email, and then I'll send that version to them. And then it's amazing.
That's smart.
And they will feel, and I'll get all the time, Alex, you just seem like you know me.
That's crazy.
It's like a hack, right?
Yeah.
And all it is, and it's not cheating, it's that it's helping me, knowing how they are, stretching me outside of my normal personality.
Yeah.
And before, I would just write it the way I would want it. I'm like, man, I feel like we're not communicating right. You know, or if I'm prepping for a really big meeting, I'll just say, hey, I'm meeting with this person, and these are the key points I want to make, but they seem to be really hung up on these issues, or they seem to have these as their triggers. It'll give me a really good outline. So, like, as an example, I had to meet with somebody, and their personality type was they really care about the details. Okay. And I said, how do I start this meeting? I didn't even know how to start it. And so I put all the things I wanted to cover. I had my own outline the way I would have done it myself. And it was completely the opposite. And AI said, you should start with this, and you should tell him these 3 things. And it was so cool. So I did this meeting, and at the end, I go, what'd you think? He goes, man, I just really loved how you started the meeting. I just felt so heard. I felt so seen. And I'm just like, what? You know, right? Yeah. And so we see a lot of tools with that, and I think it's still learning and growing. But it is a pretty fascinating tool.
Wow. So specifically, you mentioned one way you use it in your business. Are there any other ways you use it in your 3 businesses?
For marketing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really speeds up the marketing content, because I am the kind of guy now that I daydream, particularly when I'm driving. That's like my creative time. And so rather than sitting down and trying to write it out, I'll just sketch out a bunch of stuff. I'll say, help me come up with a marketing campaign for blah, 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 blah. And it's not perfect. I would say like ChatGPT gets me like 65 to 70% of the way there, but it'll take like a jumbled, word salad and then get it most of the way there, so then I can refine it, and then I can send it to my marketing people, and then it just saves so much time.
So before we go on to this last topic, in terms of utilizing AI as a tool, I mean, how would you recommend for especially our generation, to be able to critical think but still use it? What tips would you give?
Yeah. Well, don't cheat. My wife's a college professor, and so she's getting a lot of papers back that's like 100% AI. I'm like, crazy. Could she even like make it 90%? But I would say really avoid the temptation to go there first, because it's like I've already done the hard work, right? I went to college, I did really well, went to law school, and so I use it now as a tool to kind of jumpstart me. but I have that foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I think you'd be like young people would be shortchanging themselves if they haven't trained their brain there yet. Because for me, it's like saving me time so that I can then maximize my time to go do a bunch of other stuff that I'm doing. But I've already had my brain trained to do that type of critical thinking. And I would just hate for young folks to feel like they don't have to learn that stuff, because you might then be missing out on the ability to have those ideas. That's where I just don't know what would happen if people were just only using AI.
No more
would you even have the idea?
Creativity,
you know what I mean? Yeah, it might stifle creativity. Yeah.
Okay, so last thing I want to talk about is the balance between work life and just living life. And you mentioned this earlier, and this is why I'm kind of excited to get to this part, is how do you look at, just broadly, look at working versus health in life? I guess sleep, eating right, all that, versus working hard.
Yeah, I think the concept of work-life balance is a myth, because most places they'll say that, and then it's like a lip service, and then people just work too much. I look at it more of like work-life integration. I kind of look at like work as your calling. If you're going to do a job, whatever your job is, you should do it with all your might and do it to the best of your ability. Like, do it with excellence. If you're a janitor, you should be the best janitor that you've ever had. And in fact, my dad, he passed away when he was 52. I was in my 20s, but they had run into some tough financial times, my mom and my dad. And in order to save their house, he had to get a job as a janitor at my sister's elementary school. He had to get a paper route, and he was working in Silicon Valley.
Wow.
I have such respect for him that he was able to swallow his pride and do that. And he was like in his 40s, and he was an awesome janitor, and he was an awesome paper boy, and did all that kind of stuff. Wow. So, right, so if you're going to do that, you just got to do it to the best of your ability. But I look at it more of like integrating your work with your life. Don't be a workaholic. Don't let it consume you. Put whatever your values are. If you have faith, that's first. You put your family second, and you work your work into that third. The way that we do it, and the way that I've done it, where I kind of bill, by the hour.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Like, I'm here, I don't know when this is going to air, but it's like 4:00. Right after this, I'm going to go pick up a kid from baseball practice at the high school. And then I'm going to go home and I'm going to work a little bit. Then I'm going to hang out with my kids a little bit more. We'll do dinner. I'll probably work a few hours tonight. I'll get up early and get some work done. And I work into the rhythm of my life.
Okay.
But I put life first, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
And it's just worked for me. But I remember the way it used to be was work always came first and family came second. And the joke, or the comment I used to make, was I used to be a no dad. My wife would say, "Can you do this?" The answer was always no. And now I try to be a yes dad. And sometimes I have to say no because there's an important client meeting or something like that. But by and large, I'm home for dinner. I coach the sports. I show up at the events, and I work my work schedule around life. And we try to do that as a culture.
Yeah.
And it's made it so much more balanced.
Okay. So you mentioned that, again, you used to be a workaholic.
Yeah.
If you were to go back, would you change that then?
That's a really good question, because I don't know if I would be as good of a lawyer today if I hadn't done that, because I logged a lot of hours.
Yeah.
Like, pick your analogy, like sports, you get your at-bats, you get your innings. It's what allowed me to be really good. And I think what's allowed me to identify the things that I wanted to keep with Big Law and the things I wanted to jettison. I wouldn't know that if I hadn't, kind of just been grinding, honestly, for 13 or 14 years.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of things that I missed with my first two kids, because again, I barely saw them for a lot of the years of their lives. Like, come home for bath time, read a few stories and stuff like that. So that part I regret, but I don't regret the training that I got at the big firms. Because when you're at the top, when you're working for those really good firms, it's like, pick your analogy. If you want to be like a really good mechanic or something, like, and you have a chance to work on a Lamborghini, like, why would you not? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Last thing,
okay.
Last thing, faith. You touched on it multiple times throughout it. How important is that to you? What effect does that give to your life?
Well, that's number one.
Okay.
I'm a Christian, and I became a Christian in my 20s when my dad died. And so I went to law school for myself. And then when my dad passed away, it kind of rocked my world. It was the third year in law school.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, shoot, My priorities change. I have a lot longer story. My testimony is longer. We don't have enough time. But the very long story short is that the guy who led me to faith, as well as my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, my fiance at the time, I actually enrolled in seminary because I'm an Asian. I'm a good Asian. So what happens is you just go get more education. So I was working at a big international law firm by day, billing 2,000 plus hours a year, and I was going to seminary at night because I thought if you become a Christian, then what you should do is you should become a pastor or missionary. So I was drowning.
Wow.
Like I was not sleeping. I was working all the time and going to seminary, and then I was going to quit my job as a lawyer. And I told my buddy Jeremy, I said, I think I'm going to quit my job as a lawyer and become a full-time seminary student, become a pastor or missionary. Very long story short, he goes, hey man, the church has plenty of pastors and missionaries. We don't have very many lawyers. So I quit seminary and I decided I was going to, become what I call now a kingdom lawyer.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So especially your kids, Maddox is into that. So how do you introduce your kids to that? I mean, what does that look like?
We've just, we've all go to church, they go to Christian school, do all that kind of stuff. And we just integrate that into our life.
Yeah.
Tithing is a part of our lives, and, Jesus is number one. Yeah. And then the way that we run our law firm is we're a kingdom law firm. Like we tithe as a business, we are, it's faith first, family second, and it's work third. And we live that out. Like our mission as a law firm is we're peacemakers.
Yeah.
That's number one for us. And, I could go on, but we live that out. Yeah.
Okay. So last question, I ask everyone the same question at the end is, when will you just be happy? When will you retire? When will you be able to put the shoes up and say, hey, now I get to enjoy my life with no stress, no hard work? Yeah. When does that point come?
Yeah. Well, since you opened the faith box, I'm gonna keep it open.
Yeah.
I actually don't think that retirement is biblical. I don't think I'm ever going to retire. I'm content now. But I don't feel like my work or my mission is done. I think my purpose right now, where I am, is to serve businesses and business owners. And it's a little bit like my family. Like when we had 2 kids, I didn't feel like our family was complete. I don't feel like my work in California serving employers is done, of being a peacemaker is done. I'll know when this phase of my career is done. I just know God's going to let me know when that part's done. And we're not there yet. So I'm always going to be doing some type of kingdom work. Okay. Whether it means doing some more missionary stuff or, funding, more kingdom projects and things like that. But I don't think I will ever be some dude who's just playing golf and just, I love to travel. I think there's going to be a phase in my life where I'll travel more, but even if that means I'm doing some type of work or maybe doing some type of mediation, but I love the law too much.
It's amazing.
Honestly. So
it's amazing. Perfect. Thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely. So fun.